Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs War Room Update. We are on day number 285 of the war, and it continues on all fronts. In Gaza, IDF forces are continuing to really eliminate as much as possible of the Hamas infrastructure, both killing its leadership and destroying really its capabilities on the ground. The IDF yesterday announced that since the beginning of the war, over 14,000 of the estimated 25 to 30,000 strong Hamas force have already been killed. 3/4 of the leadership, really the senior leadership of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, have been eliminated. That means the divisional commanders, really the highest echelons, including Mohammed Deif, included for now in that assessment, being really the head of the Al-Qassam terror wing of Hamas, as if you can really differentiate between Hamas and its terror wing. There is no difference in reality, but that's the name that's simply given to him, him being eliminated together with Rafa Salameh just a few days ago. The question now is who will really replace him? And today we're going to talk a little bit with Yoni Ben Menachem, a fellow of the Jerusalem Center, and really try and get into that subject of what are the prospects for Hamas going forward, who is going to inherit the position of Mohammed Deif, and really what are we discussing about in the negotiations for a deal to bring back, release the hostages being held by Hamas. What will that entail from Israel's point of view? What will that entail from Hamas's point of view? A document being circulated seems to suggest that Hamas's main concern is continuing its ability to really maintain its governance in the Gaza Strip, but predominantly to maintain its financial stability, calling for the release of funds that have been seized around the world and guarantees to the safety of the Hamas leadership when going forward after the deal is implemented. On the other war fronts, we are continuing on with the war of attrition with Lebanon, whilst there seemed to be some cautious optimism last week expressed by the US administration Special Envoy Hochstein, saying that we are close to a deal with Lebanon. Just in the last few days, hundreds of rockets and missiles and attacks have been registered from Hezbollah, Lebanon, into Israel, including over 50 rockets fired just last night. If anyone wants to go onto the IDF Twitter account, you'll see there what the IDF describes as, this isn't a light show. This isn't a fireworks display. These are the Israeli interceptors from the Iron Dome intercepting dozens of missiles and rockets fired by Hezbollah, targeting Israel's civilian population in the north. In Judea and Samaria, we've seen the continuation of terrorist attacks, a shooting attack yesterday in Samaria, another attempted attack last night into a settlement called Telem in the southern Judean hills. The terrorism in Judea and Samaria is intrinsically connected to the terror coming from Gaza. It's the same terrorist organizations, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigades, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, all of them active in Gaza and all of them active also in Judea and Samaria. From the south, we've seen the continuation, obviously, of the aggression from the Houthis, the common factor being behind all of these being the Iranian hand pulling all the strings of its puppets, of its proxies all over, having now created this really ring of fire around Israel, now trying to tighten that grip and strangle Israel entirely. Based on that introduction, short as it may be today, I'd like to devote most of the time to our discussion with Yoni. Yoni, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Yoni, you wrote a few papers in the last few days that are now up on the JCPA website about really the battle of inheritance going on for who will now replace, who will now step into the shoes of Mohammed Deif, and why is Hamas hiding his death and not declaring openly that either that he's alive, as you noted, Khalil El Khaya, one of the senior Hamas operatives running around the world, immediately declared after the strike that death is alive, hears all of the Israeli bravado and is laughing. If so, Mohammed Deif, we challenge you to present yourself and show that you're alive. Is there a reason why they're not bringing Deif out if he actually is alive?
Well, I'm less optimistic when I hear the statement by the leaders of Israel and also the CIA, the head of the CIA, William Burns' estimation that Yahya Sinwar is under pressure from the commanders underneath him, in the military wing of Hamas, and that they are pressuring him for a deal. I don't tend to accept these estimations because, first of all, the CIA, unfortunately, doesn't have good sources among the Hamas military wing. If they had such good sources, they would warn us before October 7th from the coming attack of Hamas, something which did not happen. Basically, from what I know, most of the intelligence that the CIA has about Hamas, about the military wing, is from Israeli sources, thanks to the intelligence cooperation with the Israeli Mossad and with the Israeli Shin Bet, and not from independent sources. So and the fact that this was leaked to CNN and then later to the Israeli press, I think this indicates that it's psychological warfare and not something more than that. Second point is that, as I know, Yahya Sinwar is the most stubborn man in the military wing of Hamas. And when he sees such a leak to the American press and to the Israeli press, so the way he thinks, he said, oh, I see, now they think that I'm under pressure and I will yield to their demands, so I will do exactly the opposite. So, so what will happen is that he will do exactly the opposite of what the head of the CIA said, in order to show the people in Gaza what a hero he is, and that in spite of the assassination of Mohammed Deif, he is now leading the military wing, and nobody will bend him, nobody will force him to do anything. So I think it's counterproductive. As your questions about who will succeed Mohammed Deif, the word on Gaza Street, which is coming out from the tunnels of Hamas, is that the replacer of Mohammed Deif will be the brother of Yahya Sinwar. His name is Mohammed Sinwar, and he is his smaller brother, and he is more dangerous than Yahya Sinwar. Just imagine. Who is Mohammed Sinwar? Mohammed Sinwar used to be the commander of Han Yunis Brigade. He is the one who kidnapped Gilad Shalit in 2006 from a military outpost in Rafah area. And he's the one who was negotiating with Israel behind the scenes in 2011 for the Shalit deal. And he's the one who actually released his brother, Yahya Sinwar. So, and Israel Shin Bet tried to assassinate him 6 times and failed. And then he, after Yahya Sinwar was released, he became the personal assistant of Mohammed Deif, and he was helping Mohammed Deif to build this huge project of hundreds of kilometers of tunnels. And he was also until recently in charge of the personal security of his brother Yahya. So here we have a new situation in the military wing of Hamas, when two brothers, very dangerous, are leading now the military wing of Hamas. Yahya Sinwar is the commander-in-chief of the military wing and also the political leader. He holds two hats. And his brother Muhammad now is going to succeed Muhammad Deif as the supreme commander of the military wing. So the military wing of Hamas is now under the Sinwar family command. So we have to know that this is something that is going to be brought up also in the talks of Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden and the head of CIA next week in Washington, but maybe we'll talk about it later. But we have to remember this, that the prisoner exchange deal is one of the main topics of the visit of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Of course, before the speech to the Congress, there will be a meeting next Monday with the President Biden in the White House, and then later on there will be a speech in Congress. In any case, we go back to the issue of the hostages at the military wing. I don't see anything coming now of a deal, a release of the hostages. Nothing is going to happen before Netanyahu's visit to Washington and the speech in the Congress. Everything is going to be delayed afterwards. And as far as what I know, Yahya Sinwar, after the assassination of Muhammad Deif, he and his brother Muhammad, they went back into the tunnels very deep on the ground, and they don't connect with the Hamas leadership abroad in Doha, in Qatar, in Turkey. They are now sitting and waiting and letting Israel wonder what's going to happen. They want to confuse us. And this is why, as you started asking, why they are not revealing the fact that Muhammad Deif was really assassinated. Why are they keeping quiet? This is a policy of Hamas, of the military wing. If you remember, on March, Israel assassinated Marwan Issa, the chief of staff of the military wing of Hamas, in Nuseirat refugee camp in the center of Gaza Strip. Also by airplanes. He was underneath in the tunnel in an underground compound, and Israel used very heavy bombs and managed to kill him. And until this very day, the military wing of Hamas does not approve or does not confirm the assassination of Marwan Issa. So why should now they confirm the death of Muhammad Deif? This is a serious blow, operational and moral blow for the military wing of Hamas. Muhammad Deif, he was wanted #1 by Israel for the last 30 years. The last 30 years, the most wanted terrorist as far as Israel is concerned. And this is a huge achievement for Israeli Shin Bet and Israeli intelligence, especially after the big failure of October 7th. Muhammad Deif was a symbol, an icon of the jihad of the military wing. He was the pride of all the Palestinians, not only in Gaza, also in the West Bank, in the Arab countries. If you remember all the demonstrations on the Temple Mount, they were chanting, "We are the soldiers of Muhammad Deif," while there were demonstrations and so on. And this is a big embarrassment now for the military wing of Hamas. How did Israel manage to assassinate him? This is something that I will talk about, but I'm just actually writing a paper. Maybe I'll send it to you tomorrow to read. I didn't finish it yet. But the basic thing is, according to Palestinians sources, apparently the Shin Bet now is able to recruit more collaborators in Gaza Strip. A lot more than it used to do in the past. And the Palestinians in Gaza, they are insisting that the information that led the Shin Bet and the Israeli Air Force and the Israeli intelligence to assassinate Muhammad Deif came from what is called in the professional language human intelligence. That means Palestinian collaborators who delivered the information to the Israeli Shin Bet. One of the two serious reasons for more collaborating now joining the Shabak, the Shin Bet, and this is because of the disastrous situation in Gaza Strip economically and the humanitarian situation, and they need money and they need the help of the Israeli Shin Bet. The second thing is that they are fed up with Hamas, with Yahya Sinwar and the military wing, and they want to take revenge. There are a lot of people in Gaza, they want to take revenge on Sinwar and his brother and then Muhammad Deif because of the new Nakba that they brought on the Palestinian people on the 7th of October. And this is one of the ways to take revenge of them is to collaborate with the Israeli Shin Bet. I'm just telling you generally.
So I think on that, Yoni, I would like to say that I was thinking great minds think alike. I actually believe that I saw a report that also the information that led to Deif's assassination was based on human intelligence, and someone then mentioned that at the beginning of the war, Israel had offered a $400,000 reward for anyone who would provide information for as to the whereabouts of Muhammad Deif and the likes. But I think I would like to try and maybe suggest a different angle on this. I think that the fact that the Palestinians in Gaza, the Gazans, are now willing to collaborate with Israel, to give information to Israel, is a much bigger step and a much bigger indicator of what's going on. Why do I say that? What we'd heard all the way along during the war, and we're the JCPA, Yoni, you've been here in a few discussions with us regarding the future of the Gaza Strip. The statement was always very clear. Nothing can be discussed about the future of the Gaza Strip unless Hamas is destroyed. Whilst Hamas is left with any type of capability, the local population will be afraid because they know that Hamas will kill them. I think that the fact that more and more Gazans are willing to cooperate with Israel is an indicator of really even the feeling of the Gazans that the tipping point to crushing Hamas, to toppling Hamas, has arrived, and that they can now, not freely, but much more openly and much more willingly help Israel to achieve that goal of toppling Hamas. Is that something that may be a relevant consideration?
Maybe not to the extent that you are describing. There is a point, of course, in what you said. We have to remember that still the military wing of Hamas lost only half of its power because of the war and thanks to the IDF activities and operations. But they still have 15,000 armed terrorists, and they still have hundreds of kilometers of tunnels underground, which the IDF did not even discover. So they have still the military capabilities, and this is why Yahya Sinwar is not going to surrender very easily, because he's saying, him and his brother Muhammad, we still have half of the power of the military wing. Why should we surrender, and why should we go to a deal? Let Israel wait. Let's squeeze Israel. Let's blackmail Israel more. Why should we have to make concessions now? This is one point. On the other hand, what you described is true, because they know that Hamas is still controlling the Gaza in certain areas. But what is interesting is that they see the determination, the Israeli determination, especially determination of the Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is putting red lines and is standing in spite of all the international pressure and in spite of the internal pressure in Israel, and is determined to destroy Hamas. And I think, from what I speak to the Palestinians, that they're very impressed from this position of the Israeli Prime Minister, and they understand that the end of the game is coming soon, and Netanyahu is not going to let go. He's going to put pressure on the military in spite of the opposition in the top of the military, and he will continue until he will make Hamas collapse, the military wing. So it's a lot of work yet. We need a few more months. You already see that Netanyahu is holding and is not approving the army request to go to phase 3 of the war and only have raids in Gaza. You see that there's no decision about it in the Israeli cabinet because Netanyahu wants to take advantage of the momentum of the assassination of Mohammed Deif and Rafi Salameh in order to put more pressure and try to get to Yahya Sinwar and his brother. If the IDF and the Shin Bet will be able to assassinate those two terrorists, master terrorists, Yahya Sinwar and his brother, this is going to be a big and huge breakthrough in achieving the goals of the war. So let's hope that now the intelligence is improving and we will get there eventually. All we need is a determination and stop, all these arguments among us and be united in order to achieve this goal. This is something very important.
That's definitely part of the equation, is that friction on the ground that during the period since 2005 all the way through really to October 2023 that prevented the Israeli immediate contact with the Gazan population. And now once the IDF is on the ground, the Shin Bet is on the ground, they're able to create that web of information coming in simply from the people being arrested, the amount of intelligence that's been gathered from those arrested.
No, it's beyond that. It's beyond that already.
And also then from the friction on the ground with the people who haven't been arrested, they're still there. They're still living in the Gaza Strip. They're still operating within the Gaza Strip. And all of those things together, I think, are giving quite an outstanding picture of intelligence as to what's going on, where it's happening, and what the assets that remain for Hamas are. And that's why the IDF is, I think, reporting every few days we see another strategic Hamas tunnel being exploded, because they are being uncovered. If you remember, at least one report that I saw said that a lot of the intelligence about the tunnel system was gathered from the different intelligence, I would say, files that the IDF and the Shin Bet have managed to put together from the Hamas server farm underneath UNRWA's headquarters, from other plans that have been seized on the ground. Really putting that entire picture together has provided that ability to then translate that into active engagement also with the local population, and then to improve that intelligence as we go along.
Yeah, and I will get back to it, but before I forget to answer your previous questions about why is the Shin Bet sure that Mohammed Deif is dead, because the Shin Bet now has intelligence indications that among those who were killed with Rafi Salameh were the personal bodyguards of Mohammed Deif. So, and also indication that Mohammed Deif was with Rafi Salameh at the minute of the bombardment. So if he is killed and the bodyguards of Mohammed Deif were killed, one can only assume that also Mohammed Deif was killed, because so there was no other place to go. They were in the same room, in the same compound that was bombarded by the Israeli airplanes. So, and there are growing indications every hour. There's something coming in, new information to the Shin Bet from Gaza about that only strengthened. I cannot go into the details, but it only strengthened the assumption that he was really killed. So I think that now the Shin Bet is collecting all the evidence, and maybe some of the not so secret and sensitive information, maybe Israel will initiate a press conference and reveal other indications and prove that Hamas is lying. This is also something that should be done to uncover the mask and prove what kind of misinformation and lies the military spokesman of the military wing of Hamas, Abu Ubaidah, is spreading lies all the time. So maybe it's a good idea to come out and present the evidence that Israel has about the death of Mohammed Deif.
In World War II, there was the famous Lord Haw, who would speak on behalf of the Germans and really put out their propaganda to deceive the world. And Ubaidah is exactly that. He's the modern day Lord Haw. He's the one who's trying to sell the alternative reality to the world, even though we probably know better. But there's no consequences. There's no responsibility. There's no accountability. They can say what they want, do what they want, because rarely no one comes back to them. So I think that's their strength, right?
Yeah, exactly. And to answer your question about the tunnels, you'll be amazed if you know where was the most developed complex of tunnels, and still the IDF is covering more and more tunnels. Where is it? In Rafah. Yeah. Under Philadelphia corridor. This is the place that they said, don't go there. We're not, they were trying to prevent in different lies and different tricks to prevent the IDF from occupying this Philadelphia corridor, because they knew what is underneath. And the army.
So did Egypt.
Yeah. So the army is still not revealing everything, but from what I hear from my sources is that there is a huge complex there with what they call intelligence treasures. They have discovered some new intelligence material in Rafah, in the tunnels, and they are still saying that there are 20 more tunnels to be demolished that are connecting Egypt and Gaza Strip underneath the Philadelphia corridor, and we need at least 2-3 months to destroy these 20 tunnels. So just imagine what is happening down there.
I think the last estimate that I saw, Yoni, was that there were over 200 tunnels from Gaza into Egypt, from Egypt into Gaza. Some of them really almost the size of motorways. That for 2 directions of trucks going backwards and forwards, really quite substantial tunnels. And this, and as you say, this intelligence treasure test that I hope we will be able to see a little bit into in the coming weeks and months. That is exposing really the extent of that connection between Gaza, Hamas, Egypt, and as I understand it, even wider than that. That we hopefully will be able to get a look into very soon.
Yeah, and another point that I wanted to talk about, if it's possible, is the visit of the Prime Minister Netanyahu to Washington and the scheduled meeting with President Biden and the speech in the Congress. By the way, he's taking with him some hostages that were released in the IDF operation, special operation. For instance, Noah Argamani and her father. And I think that what the Palestinians, especially Hamas now, and also the Palestinian Authority, they are very worried from Netanyahu's visit to the United States, to Washington, a meeting with Biden, because I already hear from the PA that they are very worried because since the last debate between Biden and Trump, which was an awful show of President Biden, the Palestinians are saying that there is less and less pressure, American pressure on Israel, because they now estimate that President Biden, he needs Netanyahu. Now he's dependent on Netanyahu, and he's very worried that Netanyahu will say some bad things about him in the speech in Congress, which might affect the whole campaign for the presidency. So they estimate that President Biden will be nicer now to Netanyahu, because in spite of the personal disputes between them during the war, and he will compensate Netanyahu by giving him more weapons, more ammunition, and more free hand to destroy Hamas and take over the Gaza Strip. This is something that the PA is very worried about, and also Hamas, especially Hamas. So I think this is a good development for Israel, and this is also going to be a very important opportunity for Netanyahu to make some asbara for Israel in the speech in the Congress, and talk about all the dangers and all the challenges that Israel is facing, not only with the Hamas and the Hezbollah, but also with Iran, nuclear Iran. This is a good opportunity, and I'm sure he will bring it up in his speech in the Congress.
And whilst Netanyahu is going to Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to Congress, it's worth noting, Yoni, as I've mentioned it before, and I'll carry on mentioning it time after time after time, that I don't believe anything in this world is a coincidence. Things happen for a reason. As you know, I'm a believer, as they say.
I'm a believer also. It's only thanks to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. I agree with you. Exactly. I totally agree with you.
So after all of the different delays, Prime Minister Netanyahu is actually going to speak in Congress on the 24th of July. The 24th of July will be the 102nd anniversary of the mandate for Palestine, that famous document of the League of Nations that promised the entire area from the river to the sea for the one sole purpose of reconstituting the Jewish national homeland in its ancestral homeland. And that's something which it's amazing that those days fall together. And if I can maybe call to Prime Minister Netanyahu from this humble platform, this is something that should be mentioned, because it's one of the fundamentals of Israel's legal right to this entire area, and it's something that should be mentioned as part of that whole discussion of Prime Minister Netanyahu in Congress. And I hope that he'll actually do that, remembering our legal rights, not only our moral rights.
Yes, so this is a very good development, I think. What is needed now, as I said, and I also, I tweet it a lot on Twitter. You can go into my Twitter account and see that every day I call the Israeli government to put more forces of the IDF into Gaza. I think that we should put in 2 divisions of the Israeli army and use the momentum of the assassination of Mohammed Deif to crush the military wing of Hamas. This, we have to do that. And I think in a month or 2 months, if we do that, if the IDF will go there and if the cabinet will approve this idea, I think this is a golden opportunity now to squeeze Hamas and also assassinate Yahya Sinwar and his brother Muhammad. We have to take advantage of the new situation that is now on the ground.
What's amazing, Yoni, to see is that whilst Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to speak before Congress, the Palestinian Authority is going in a completely different direction. And they are due to be a meeting in Beijing with for reconciliation talks with Hamas. Mahmoud El-Alul, Abbas's deputy, meeting with a delegation of Ismail Haniyeh under the auspices of the Chinese. It seems like Abbas is taking a completely different trajectory and trying to reconciliate with the genocidal terrorists.
I don't think it will work. I don't think it will work. If you notice this, of course, what you said is accurate. But if you notice, the one who is going to head the Fatah delegation to the talks in Beijing is Mahmoud El-Alud, as you mentioned, is the deputy of Mahmoud Abbas in Fatah. So Mahmoud Abbas is not going there personally. And just 3 days ago, Mahmoud Abbas issued a a statement against Hamas, blaming Hamas for the responsibility for the war in Gaza. And this caused a lot of resentment in Gaza, and Hamas accused Mahmoud Abbas of supporting the Israeli narrative. So this is, I think, why he changed his mind, and he's sending this delegation to try and try to get to an agreement about national unity and so on. But I can tell you that from 2007 until today, they're trying to make agreement and to sign agreements for national unity, and they signed a few drafts, and nothing came out of it, because in the bottom line is that Hamas wants to be the representative of the Palestinian people, and Mahmoud Abbas saying no, the PLO is the representative of the Palestinian people, and each one of them wants to be the leader of the Palestinians. So they're never going to reach actual agreements. I think that it will end without anything, but we'll wait and see.
I mean, that seems to be a pathway to destruction, where you're going into talks where you know that have failed over and over and over again. This reconciliation, for our audience, the abyss between Hamas and the PLO-PA that was started with the Hamas winning the elections in 2006, Abbas deposing the Hamas government, Hamas seizing control of the Gaza Strip, and then really since 2007, now I think it was June, July 2007, Hamas and Fatah have been fighting, and they've had repeated attempts at reconciliation.
Yeah, so it was in 2007. It was a military coup d'état of Hamas, and you remember whether they threw Fatah activists from the roofs of the houses in Gaza.
That's what.
Yeah, so we have to remember that point.
Part of the situation where they're fighting between themselves, but what they're fighting about, as you said, Yoni, isn't a question of, well, the Hamas are the fanatics and the PLO are the moderates, and they're fighting about the ideology of peace against war. What they're fighting, they both agree to destroy Israel, just they're fighting about who's going to lead that battle, including, most importantly, who's going to control the purse strings to all of the international aid, to the PA's finances, rather than anything else that separates them.
Yeah, and of course, there is the strategy, because Hamas, they want to destroy Israel now. PLO, he says, okay, we're willing to destroy Israel. This is what we want, but we want to do it in stages. So this is the only difference between them.
Everybody wants to destroy us, just a question of how they reach that goal. And Yoni, I want to take you back just a second also to what you said about the leak, about the pressure put on Sinwar, because I think that's representative of a much more deep and fundamental misunderstanding of the Palestinians, of their goals, of their desires. When you say that he's under pressure to capitulate, that'll push him more against moving in the step of any type of deal. And the same as when you say to the Palestinians, we are going to give you a state as a prize for terrorism, it's misunderstanding. It won't bring about peace. When you, I wrote a paper once that showed the correlation between the level of US financial support and the number of Israeli deaths from terrorism. And it's amazing to see when you put those two numbers onto a graph that they are actually one exactly over the other. As US financial support grows, so the number of terrorist attacks and the number of Israeli victims grows with it. When President Trump cut off the funding to the Palestinian Authority, the number of deaths dropped drastically. When President Biden decided to reinstate the aid, so the number of deaths again rose tremendously. And you see that pattern time after time. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of how the Palestinians interpret the actions of the Western world.
You're right. And Yahya Sinwar and his brother, they are jihadists. You know, they believe in jihad. and killing all the Jews and the Christians. And actually, I think a month ago or something like that, I heard one story from a Gaza source saying that somebody in the tunnels heard Yahya Sinwar telling his associates, Netanyahu, he was quoting something from the Quran, saying that our enemies think that they are stubborn, but we are more stubborn than they are. Actually, was quoting something in Arabic from the Quran. I have it in written down. So this shows you the way they think. And they are very determined because they are motivated by hatred and religion, not only by national goals, as they call it, but this is something which is part of the jihad, and this is something that we don't understand, or most of us don't understand. The only few people that understand the spirit of the jihad is leading them, and they believe in Allah and the desire to kill all the Jews. This is their motto. This is what is leading them, and they see the success of the attack on October 7 as the beginning of this prophecy, and a good sign that they can achieve their goals. This is something that we have to understand.
That's something which really is a question for psychologists, as to trying to understand the difference between the approaches, the mentality, the mindset of the different groups, and when you want to then move things forward, negotiate peace deals, for example, you can't come into those negotiations with ideas that only you hold when the other side isn't there and isn't party to that, even that basic mindset that you're trying to promote. Yoni, unfortunately, as is always the case, we've almost run out of time. A positive note, taking us into the next week. I think what you said before was unfortunately very negative, I have to say, Yoni, which is very uncharacteristic. That nothing is going to happen until Prime Minister Netanyahu speaks in Congress. I fear that you're right. It means that for now we're just stuck in this quagmire for at least another 7 to 8, 10 days. So at least there must be a little bit of something positive to say on the way.
You know, the thing which is positive is the Netanyahu going to Washington, because I'm sure that he will have a very good performance in the United Nations, in the Congress, which will affect also the United Nations, and he knows very well how to play the game. We've seen it in the past, and I think also that the meeting with President Biden will be good, and Israel will get more support from the Biden administration, also weapons and ammunition, and also political support. This is very important, and this can strengthen Israel in its effort to defeat Hamas. So we have to look also at the good side of things that are happening in the coming days.
As we've said many times, Yoni, the key to restoring any semblance of normality in the Middle East passes through defeating Hamas. If Israel cannot defeat Hamas, then it certainly cannot deal with Hezbollah. It won't be able to deal with Iran. And so really that determination of Prime Minister Netanyahu is the key to opening and changing what's going forward. So really, I do hope that the elimination of Mohammed Deif, the weakening of Hamas, the continued weakening of Hamas, will be something that we'll see developing really in the near future, and that military pressure will, I hope, as I believe to be the case, will actually help bring about and secure the release of the hostages, rather than placing our beliefs in false ideas of Hamas pragmatism and any type of deal that will allow them to see themselves returning to some form of governance in the Gaza Strip. So Yoni, again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
To our audience, thank you as well for joining us as ever. We will be back with you next week on Monday. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Have a good Shabbat and keep well.